Hot stove conversations about baseball, history, football, and current events that may leave you saying there's more to consider. Now here's your host, Jack Moore.
Okay, here we are. More to consider. Kirk Buckner from, not in the Hall of Fame, Jack from More to Consider. So what we were doing, we talked about, we had a baseball show. We have our friend Gil Florentino that we do baseball with. Lincoln buddy of ours, knows everybody, grew up with Sosa and Ortiz and he's friends with Pujols, knows everybody that played in pro ball, and we do the kind of a baseball show together. So let me just say this because I want to get your take on this. And so when we got into tonight, we've been kind of, doing this whole thing about myths in baseball, myths in other sports. And I forgot to ask, let me go off on this too. I forgot to ask Upton about this, but I thought about it later. Maybe I shouldn't. One of the great famous conspiracy theories is the Colts throwing the Super Bowl III against the Jets. You do know about that, right?
I've heard about it, but I didn't really hear a whole lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bubba Smith, to his death, was pissed off. He was one of the Colts.
Yeah.
And there's a famous play in it that the Colts had repeatedly run. It was kind of the Statue of Liberty, left, right, go around, almost like a flea flicker where you do a little spinning around the backfield, a couple people handle the ball and get it back to Earl Morrall and hope that somebody kind of forgets in the carousel move that the flanker's running down the field, and that flanker was Jimmy Orr. So you can go back and watch the film. It's pretty famous. Jimmy Orr is running and his fingers are waving and he's down the field waving and he's wide ass open.
I've watched that, yeah.
I've
watched that.
And Morrall throws it back across the other side of the field and throws an interception. All right, I'm sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I rewatched that because I've been rewatching like everything that, like every playoff game I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
Especially including the ones that are before that. And I do remember watching that, but I didn't know that there was a conspiracy theory that was going on after.
Well, here's what the conspiracy theory is, and think about it. Well, all right, let me just give everybody the history, because this is one of the things that Upton and I did talk about, was the All-America Conference had the Browns, the 49ers, I think the original Colts, and it had these teams, and they were kind of playing rival with the league, and Burt Bell worked to basically bring those teams into the NFL, and then the Browns come right in and beat the hell out of everybody, and they go to 10 straight. Between the American Conference, the All-America Conference, I believe it was, and the NFL, they went to like 10 straight championship games. Graham never played a season in his career that he wasn't in the championship, and he won 6, I think, whatever it was. God bless Otto Graham, he was great. But that kind of dies down the other league situation until Lamar Hunt famously runs around. He's a rich oil man's kid. He's part of the Hunt family of oil. He wants to be a football owner, wants to be involved. And the story that I've seen him on an interview say is that he goes to one of the league owners and says, I really want a franchise. And he goes, son, you and all your money you want, hell, I've had 10 other guys come to my office wanting a team. And then he goes, he's literally flying back from that meeting and went, well, wait a minute. The guy just kind of let the cat out of the bag. He just said there's 10 other guys like me. So why don't we just start a league, or 8 other guys or whatever? So he does. He starts the league. So the American League, and when it gets nasty is when Pete Gogolak famously gets pulled away from the Bills by the New York Giants. And that's when all the fighting over the draft, they were having, 2 different separate drafts. The league started to say, like, okay, if we start stealing each other's players, especially if the NFL comes in there and poaches an AFL player, and Charlie Gogolak was, or Pete Gogolak, Charlie was his brother, kicked for the Redskins. If we're starting to lose, elite star players, then we got to free-for-all, we got to stop. So that's when the sit-down came and like, okay, let's have a common draft and work towards merger. Okay, so the 66 season ends up being the first Super Bowl. And the Packers are 14-10 at halftime and then blow them out the second half. And the Chiefs, don't look like they're in the same league with them, but, it's a good first half. And then the Packers kind of beat the hell out of the Raiders. So it's 0-2. So the Scuttlebutt is in the 68 season, that's 66, 67, now in 68, the Colts are 13-1. And of course, Upton's there at the time. He's part of that team. He's in the front office. So Johnny Unitas gets injured. Earl Morrall comes in, which is exactly what he does in 72 for the Dolphins, becomes the elite off the bench backup quarterback. He has an MVP season. They're 13-1. They have the best defense in football. They lose one game, and then they beat the hell out of the Browns. It's the only game they lost during the regular season. And they're an 18-point favorite in the Super Bowl. I remember it. It was David and Goliath. But I mean, the Jets. They're going to beat the Colts. It was like nobody's going to beat the Colts. This is the greatest team in football history. And then it happened, 16-7. And it's not so much, and I love Joe Namath. Let me just say that up front to everybody. I love Joe Namath. He's from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. He's a Pennsylvania guy. He's outside of Pittsburgh. Great guy, great teammate, all that. But he doesn't exactly light up the world in that Super Bowl. It's a good game. He doesn't make any mistakes, really. And they kick a bunch of field goals, and he wins 16-7. And then Johnny Unitas comes off the bench and gets one touchdown. But the whole thing didn't look right. It just didn't look right. Now, Namath has claimed that in watching game film, he knew they were going to just beat them. You know, they knew how to pick apart what they were, and they had a good running game, etc. The scuttlebutt has been that Pete Rozelle, I don't know who you go to, who you influence or whatever, but the feeling was, look, if we go 3-0 and the merger follows the next Super Bowl, because that next Super Bowl was the last 69 season, was the last before the merger. If we keep beating the hell out of the AFL, no one's going to believe in the merger. That was supposed to be. So they went to Baltimore. There were 16 teams, 1969 in the NFL. There were 10 in the AFL. So there also was a sit down of NFL owners and said, hey, somebody's going to have to take a bite out of this sandwich. Somebody's going to have to jump to the AFL. And the story I've heard was, it was like, nah, not me. And then Art Modell was told, and here's a bonus of cash or something. So he goes, okay, I'll do it. So Cleveland goes over. And then Pittsburgh and Baltimore did for whatever reasons. So I do find it interesting that Baltimore was one of the teams that went to the AFL and then won the Super Bowl as an AFC team, beat Dallas. And they were also the team that lost the Super Bowl. Now, I've also heard people say that, like, Don Shula never emotionally got over that game. I know he could not have been in on it. I don't know that anybody was in on it. It could have just been a poor performance, but it's led to, when I said Bubba Smith, I heard Bubba Smith was always like, something's not right about that game. I was a part of it. I didn't like the way it felt. Something didn't feel right. So but that's one of the great controversies as well.
I know this is sort of off topic, but if Namath doesn't win that, do you think that he even sniffs the Hall of Fame?
That is a great question. It is a great question. And I've seen whole not documented, but I've seen whole half-hour shows where people discuss this. He had a losing record in his career.
I believe he had more interceptions, too, than
Yes, he had more interceptions, far more. But what he did was he threw for 4,000 yards in the AFL before anyone else did. And I will say that I saw him play in 75 in a preseason game against Washington. Those Lenox Hill knee braces he wore, the poor guy, he could barely stand it. But this, again, is why I love Joe Namath. I love Joe Namath because he was respected by his teammates. I think he was a great teammate. I think in the time of the 70s, on the race question and things like that, I think he was a great guy. He was a Pennsylvania guy. He's like, and I've seen the story. His best friend growing up was a black kid from down the street, and that's who he hung out with. And the black players loved and respected him. And when he went to Alabama, he didn't understand the whole segregation thing when he went to University of Alabama. So I think he's a cool cat. And I think that's it. That's a big part of it. He was a cool dude. And there was a lot of coolness to him. I think he was loved by, he helped increase salaries. So I think as a player in the pool of players, he was loved. But I absolutely believe that had he not won that Super Bowl, there would have been little case for him to be in the Hall of Fame. But I'm glad he is because I just love the guy. But yeah.
I think sometimes what people forget
it's
about
a tough one.
Fame in general is that Halls of Fame, well, I think what sometimes people forget about Halls of Fame in general is that the key word is fame.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's famous.
So yeah,
Nobody more famous than him. Nah, yeah, he led the league in fame. Yeah, he was definitely.
for many, many, many years.
Well, another guy I was a really big fan of, and I don't know that he's ever really sniffed the Hall of Fame, but you go back and look at the body of work, he was really good, was Fred Dryer. And, he went on to fame playing Hunter. God, he was great on TV, kicking people. He's 6'6", and, he was 6'6", 245, lean, like no body fat guy. And he was California.
Clint Eastwood vibes.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yes, bigger version. Clint's 6'3", but yeah, he was a bigger version of, and I was a big fan of Fred Dryer, but I remember seeing him on an interview one time, and they literally showed some film, and it was kind of touching. It was guys tapping Namath, picking Namath up, brushing Namath off. I saw Johnny Unitas treated the same way at the end of his career. I saw the same thing with Unitas. And somebody said to Dryer, did you guys consciously take it easy on Namath? He goes, hell yeah. He goes, salary increases, the vibe, what he did for the game, hell yeah. We love Joe Namath. Like, he was like a player saying, yeah, we all cared for Joe Namath. Like, now we weren't going to take a cheap shot at Namath or take his knees out. No, I tackled him. I sacked him, but I picked him up. I like Joe. And he was like, I like Joe.
I think this clip, you need to clip this and then send it to the women's basketball players and remind them about Caitlin Clark.
Boy, that's a quagmire when you bring... I don't totally get... Well, I guess I kind of in some ways get it. And that's what's sad. It's a sad set of circumstances that she is the player she is and puts up with or she has to put up with what she's putting up with. It's an interesting league in the first place,
It is. I joke around in some of my other shows that I want to do hashtag Buckner for commissioner. I got my 10-point plan ready, but that's another story.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and, I'll just go ahead and do it. I'll be super politically incorrect. No, I'm not going to go, well, because I have to divulge. I just remember somebody years ago that was a female that I knew that was kind of on a crusade relative to a particular sport and women in it. And it was baseball. And, I kind of thought, I played college baseball. 1 in 50 guys in America, 1 in 50, which leads me to the next topic I want to bring up to you. 1 in 50 guys that played college 25, 30 years ago would ever play a day in professional baseball. And then anyone that played in the minor leagues, which is another pet peeve of mine. God, when I ever hear people's like, hey, what about your friend there? What did he do? I said, well, he played through AAA. Oh, did he ever play pro ball? That is pro ball, asshole. No, that is professional. I hate that when they go like, well, did you ever play pro ball? Like, no, every level that you get paid is minor league baseball. It's independent baseball. You are a professional baseball player. And that's big. Guys in affiliated baseball respect guys that played independent ball. You got paid. You're professionals. Anyway, I was thinking about the people that I knew that the odds once you were in the minors, if you played one day in the minors or you played in the minors, your odds of ever playing a day in the big leagues was 1 in 11. It was 1 in 11. 1 in 11 guys got any time in the big leagues. So it was 1 in 50 to get that pro ball out of college. And then if you got into pro ball, it was 1 in 11 did you ever spend even one day in the big leagues. So I'm talking to this female and she's like, well, it's a lack of training. It's a lot of, I said, young lady, I've had friends who were ungodly talented. They couldn't tap out of AAA. They couldn't get, and they were 6'3" and 215, 220. Whatever. What the hell makes you think there's some female hidden in a closet somewhere that they're hiding from the world? Well, it's because of training. I'm like, bullshit. No. Stop that. It's not. And I was explaining it to another female friend of mine one time. I said, if I put my finger here at one end of the screen, and here's my finger. Here are all adult males, okay? These are all adult males. There's the guys I've got the chance to work with in professional baseball as an instructor. That right between my fingers, that's those guys. Go out and watch your average doofus 35-year-old throw a baseball. You know what I mean? You could ask. I used to see it in an indoor facility I worked in. You'd see dads grab the bat and try to hit and fall on their ass or whatever. And they were just average 35-year-old guys with a 12-year-old kid. So when people watch baseball at a live game, they totally miss what's really going on out there because they played Little League and they think, oh, I could catch that fly ball or I could get on down at ground level and see the speed of it when it's really happening. It's different. So I'm on my soapbox saying there's just a delusion that goes on about males and females.
You know where a lot of that
about-
sort of came
about
from too, and I
professional sports. Go
remember
ahead.
this.
You were going to say.
Remember Monet Davis? Do you remember?
Yes.
Cut out there. Okay.
She's
so
working
Monet
in the
Davis,
front
right?
office now, right?
I don't know. I mean, I looked her up a year ago because I was going to like make a point about this to somebody else, but but I remember this almost clear as day. So like afterwards, so she's lighting up in the Little League World Series, and it's a phenomenal story.
It was.
And she deserved every kudos that she got.
Absolutely.
And there were article after article, story after story, saying that, that she's going to be the first woman in the majors. You know who wasn't saying that? The 12-year-old girl who knew she wouldn't be, Monet Davis. Because she knew already. I mean, she was on Letterman saying that that's not what she was going to do. She wanted to play basketball. She knew she wasn't going to get any much taller, and she didn't. She was like 5'3" then, she's 5'3" now.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. You know what? You're nailing it. She's 5'4", but she grew up in Philadelphia. I'd forgotten that she played softball at Hampton. That's right down the road from me, Hampton
She's actually
University.
playing more basketball. I think she plays basketball.
Yeah,
there
she
too.
did.
Yeah,
Says
so
former Hampton, Little League pitcher, 5'4". Yeah, that's so sad though that she gets put in that kind of situation.
she was, but she was smart enough to know at 12 years old. No, I'm not going to make the majors. And thank God there were some smart people around her to sort of like keep her grounded.
Well, yeah. I mean, she sounded like a really good girl. Everything. But, the other point is, too, though, I'm all for when kids are 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Anybody wants to go out there and play because you see it in the development of males and females. Females at 11 and 12 will often be, many of them will be out there on the field when the others are 12 and can to some degree compete. Maybe they could even excel because they're reaching their degree of maturation much faster than the males. 17 is when it's not the same. I mean, you reach a point. So this is exactly what happened with Davis. What was she doing? The Little League pitching. I mean, what's the ceiling on that is that's the 12-year-old league. So, yeah, there you go. She was 12 when she was doing the pitching. So yeah, she is a 12-year-old. I mean, does she belong? She clearly belonged on the field. She was dominating.
Yeah,
but it doesn't mean she's going to pitch at 24 in the big leagues.
No,
the 12 to 24s, yeah.
I mean, we even just saw that. I didn't watch it because I'm not a big tennis guy, but there was something on Netflix.
The Bobby Riggs story? Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King?
Well, there's that, but I mean, I'm talking about something that they just did.
Okay.
And it was a male versus female, and I apologize to your audience. Tennis is not my strength.
No, but I mean, I remember, yeah.
Well, going back to that one. But yeah, anyway, so the male defeated the female, and they shrunk her side of the court, so that he still won. But going back to that one, that's one thing though that I was reading that one thing in ESPN, where it was this one person who sort of like came out and said like, no, Riggs really threw it.
He may have. He beat Margaret Court like 6-1, 6-love. Yeah, like a few weeks before. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And it was becoming all the rage. Now, the other thing he did, because I remember all this, he was out promoting himself as, male chauvinist pig of the year. I mean, he would play with a raincoat on. He was carrying a briefcase in the other hand. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And beating women left and right. The other thing that's lost, he was a professional player, and he was a player of some note in his 20s. So he's doing this when he's 55. So when they do the whole thing with Billie Jean King, I think I heard something, that same kind of thing, like he bet against himself or something, like he was kind of in on the whole thing or tried to make $1 out of it. I don't know. I thought Billie Jean King, I have no idea. I'm not an expert in tennis. I mean, I've watched it as a kid. But she was certainly a much more advanced and higher ranked player than Margaret Court. So him beating up on Margaret Court and losing to King was definitely, it seemed feasible.
Well, at that time, wasn't Court higher ranked? She just didn't jump into the... I could be wrong on this, but...
I don't know if at the time. That's an interesting point.
Court didn't join the league that Billie Jean King formed. And I want to be very clear. What Billie Jean King did for women's sports, not just in tennis, is incredible.
I always thought she was the goods.
Yeah.
And I was a huge fan. I'm going to tell you what, I was a huge fan of Martina Navratilova.
Mm-hmm.
Just as an athlete,
Period.
she kicked ass, and I liked her. I liked her a lot.
And she'll say whatever's on her mind, unapologetically.
Yeah, and I'm kind of always was cool with her, like really cool. I always really liked her, and yeah, she went through. Here we go. Let's see.
Stuff too. You know, like while you're looking that up, I remember Navratilova, some of the quotes that she sort of had. When Magic Johnson got AIDS, she said,
Yeah.
"Well, I mean, tragic." I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember it exactly, but you know, it's a shame that this happened to him. But you know, if it would have happened to me, people would have said I deserved it. And in 1992, yeah, she's not wrong. People would have said that.
Yeah, but you see what she's been shut down for, taking stands on recently. It's
that's a crazy thing in itself.
Some
really
stuff. If you play around with reality long enough, some stuff's going to start to backfire. I think one of the most touching things, when you're talking about Magic Johnson and the HIV positive thing, I just thought one of the most touching documentaries I've ever seen was the whole, when they first played together on that college team in summer league, and Bird wouldn't even look at him. They play against each other in the national championship. They go to the NBA, and it's not until the Converse commercial in French Lick, when they film it, that Magic goes in and schmoozes Larry Bird's mom. And Larry Bird's mom falls in love with Magic, that they really become friendly. And that's like in 1986. So it's 5-6 years ahead of, I want to say his announcement was November 1. I always remember it was November 1. I think it was 91, wasn't it? Because he's on the 92 Dream Team right after it.
You're right, yeah, because they weren't sure whether he was going to play or not.
Right.
And because that was like back when nobody really understood that.
Well, he said that, I saw it on this like documentary between Bird and Johnson. He's like, I had people turn their back on me. I had people rumor parts of my life and, you know, just stuff. He goes, the first guy to call me, the first guy, after many friends turned their back, the very first time the phone rang, it was Larry Bird.
That's cool.
Well, yeah, and he said, I love you, brother. Whatever you need, call me. Whatever this is I need to do, let me know. And Johnson is clearly shaken. He's emotional talking about it. First guy to call. The one that never asked me a question, never said, never made a judgmental. The first guy to call was Larry Bird. So that's what they had become in 10 years. Between coming out of college to where that happened. Hey, you know, and I will say this, as a racial dynamic, it is funny. It is so funny to watch these guys, and I see it all the time on these things on YouTube, where these black guys will talk about going home and people go like, why are you letting that white guy? And they're like, you don't understand, because it is a black man's sport, right? And they're like, they'll all admit like, well, I saw one just, I think today with Magic Johnson, and he goes, the first time I saw Bird play, he was like, yep, he is that guy. I've heard the rumors. And man, when you go back and watch the film, it's just really the whole 80s, man. All those guys that were playing then. You know, it's back to what I'm saying. When I go back and I watch Jordan as he was becoming Jordan, and you know, the Clyde Drexler and Jabbar still being a force, and Irvin on the way out. But I was a big fan of Julius Irvin. NBA was sexy as hell, man, in the 80s, because Bird and Magic saved it. They did.
God, yeah, that league.
They saved it.
Yeah,
that 80s brother was sexy. It was sexy.
Absolutely. I had no idea that Larry Bird was the consummate trash talker that he was.
Oh, yeah. Well, then that's part of the racial thing that's funny, too, is I was watching one of the black guys that played against him. And he goes, get this. Like, we're playing, and we got a guy that's a pretty good defender. He's 6'7", 6'8", and we got him on Bird, and he is trash talking our coach, going, why do you have a white guy on me? That, you know, so he's yelling at the coach about how disrespectful it is that they're guarding him with the white guy. And the black guys are laughing about it. They're like, that damn Bird, man, he was making, like, hey. And there's so many of them that said, he looked right at me and said, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and pull up from 30 and hit it, and he did. So he was that guy. And, you know, McHale had a lot of that, too. Kevin McHale had a lot of that badass, too. He was a dude. I mean, it was a good team. I mean, Boston was a good team. It's a different era.
Basketball's, it's it's a much harder sport to watch these days,
I
unfortunately.
loved it back then, though. I'm gonna tell you, when it was Lakers and Celtics, and then on to the Bulls, and some of the time with Detroit. I mean, it was. I was watching it. I don't watch it at all anymore. I just don't see it anymore.
Too much flopping and the threes are out of control.
Yeah, they've lost the mid-range game. I mean, I could sit there and talk like I really knew what the hell I was talking about. But there's another thing, though. I try to watch college every year in March a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I remember, again, I was talking to some young kids the other year, and I said, you know what I saw, guys? And they're like, what's that? What, Coach? What did you see? I said, I saw Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, and James Worthy on the same team. I saw them win a national championship at Carolina. You'll never see that. But there's Joey this, and I said, guys, you didn't see Perkins, Worthy, and Jordan on the same team. You didn't see that. You haven't seen that level of talent that I saw guys going 3 and 4 years of school. You don't see the same thing. You just didn't see it. And it was different, brother. I'm telling you, that was pretty good basketball.
I know we're sort of like sounding like people like get off my lawn, but the flopping, it just got out of control. The two most dominant people right now in basketball, LeBron James and Steph Curry, indirectly are the two people who are causing its demise. It's just not, you miss the physicality. And then sometimes you see too much of that in the WNBA. If there's even going to be a league next year, who knows?
Well, that's the next place I wanted to take the show. When I was at the coaching convention, I won't say who I was talking to, but I was talking to a good friend of mine, and the friend was saying that he had heard through some pretty important channels, baseball might be getting ready to go under with what the labor. Yeah, it's too far apart. And I watched a thing the other night, and I really thought about this in the history of baseball. So what a lot of people don't know is Branch Rickey was the father of the farm system. What a lot of people don't know is he was with the St. Louis Browns and was trying to make all of this happen. And the ownership thought he was kind of too big for his britches. He was both a former major league player and an attorney, well-educated man, and he's a pioneer in the sport for sure. Absolutely. So when he gets kind of like kicked out the back door into the Cardinals, he finally gets to implement it. There was a time when the St. Louis Cardinals had 50 minor league teams, like over 800 players. Just every D and C league, the lowest levels, they had players. And some of them made it. Some were out of there, but the old joke was in every backwater town in the South, there was a Cardinals farm. There was an A&P supermarket, the old Atlantic and Pacific supermarket, and a Cardinals minor league team. So here's where I'm going. They're getting ready to make massive cuts. They're talking about going 10 rounds on the draft, and they're getting ready to cut like A-ball out. And part of it is the finances. When you look at all of minor league baseball and attendance, I think A-ball, they said, was representing less than 12% of all attendees. So it could very well become AAA, AA in the majors. Now, my question is what it's going to do. It's going to continue to open up, and this is where things are going to be like it was 100 years ago. It's going to be professional baseball, but a lot of independent leagues, non-affiliated leagues. And then you can just, you need a spare part. You need to go find a guy. You can go sign guys out of that. Mm-hmm. I can see well, that's probably maybe not the best thing or not the worst thing for Major League Baseball. But what are your thoughts on what you're hearing? And how bad do you think it looks for there to be peace and settlement?
In MLB or in the WNBA?
MLB.
I think if it goes, I've been seeing some things like this could very blow up next year, and I think a lot of the same thing that you've been seeing. Again, everything's sort of like so far apart. You'd like to think they remember what happened in '95, and it never recovered. It's never recovered, and it's hard to sort of explain that to a lot of ball players who are making more money than they could have ever dreamed, especially like from that point of view. I think they're headed down that path because they haven't learned. I think we're going to see another work stoppage. I hope it's not too long. But people have options now. People have a lot more options than they ever had. Getting just the younger people, like you're coaching a lot of people, but there's so many people who don't watch anything on sports because there's so many other things taking their attention.
That's right.
I mean, I try to educate myself on what, I don't want to necessarily be into it, but I want to know what people in that early teens are watching, just so that I've got a pulse. I don't want to be a part of it, but I want to know why Twitch is successful. I want to know why these other alternative streams are happening. And not that I want to take this political, but anyone who does sort of like a deep dive on how the 2024 election went, maybe should take a look at how the winner sort of like did campaign. Someone had more of a pulse on the modern audience than the other. I'll leave it at that, but
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
yeah, there's just so many different things for people to do that they don't have the same leverage. Although the money keeps growing. At some point, this has to bust. You'd think it will, but I said that 30 years ago and it didn't happen.
Well, you know what I was watching? This is totally crazy, off subject, but it really spoke to me because I was like, whoa, never really thought about it that way. Or never really thought about it, but lived it in part. I'm watching something pop up the other day about how Hollywood is dead. You know, basically Hollywood, and I kind of knew that, but they went through the history. And when they went through the history, they talked about some of I guess it was MGM and some of the big studios. They started the idea of the studio actor, you know, paying an actor, do X number of movies, putting people on contract, not farming them out to others. And then they talked about the impact of TV. So there was an impact. And as we know with like Blockbuster, I thought Blockbuster was bulletproof. Yeah, I'm going to go down to Blockbuster every Friday night and get a couple movies to watch over the weekend. And then Netflix put that out of business kind of thing. And so we have the streaming, and I never thought about some of the things they said, but the reason we've gotten to the point they say that you're getting so many of like the Marvel Comics sequels and things like that is because they're having to put the money into what's most likely to succeed. You can't be as innovative anymore. And you are now competing against people's interest to be involved in long-running things on Netflix or other carriers. And so it's made the whole go to the theater kind of obsolete. Well, you know, because you can have an 84-inch TV now and popcorn popper and the rest. But at the same time, I think the most magical moment I ever had as a kid, I think the one that really it does. There's a couple things that were impactful about being in a theater. Seeing Saving Private Ryan about messed me up because it was right in front of me big. And that was what, late 90s, mid 90s? But the movie that I always remember, the sound and the visuals of really shaking me up in a theater was Rocky, the original. I was 14 and I was working in the theater and I got to see it over and over. And just that whole fight scene in the end with Apollo Creed and the embrace, not going to get a rematch. Man. But it was so big. It was so big on the screen. I don't care how you try to recreate it in your rec room. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's never the same. And I mean, there's other movies that were huge. I mean, you know, they were huge on screen, but that's my experience in 1976. I can imagine what people, well, I mean, I saw Gone with the Wind as a kid, and I'm going to tell you what, regardless of everybody's political views on what it is now, it's one of the greatest movies ever made. There were 7 Technicolor cameras in existence, and all 7 of them were in use. They did things that were impossible to do in the filming of said movie. And it was an epic. It was a huge movie. So, yeah, the big screen thing is kind of lost.
I live, as you know, downtown Seattle. So 2 blocks from me is a theater. We've only been to it once. It was
wow.
Daredevil versus Wolverine, because that one I thought we had to do that. There hasn't been a movie that I felt, okay, we really need to sort of like spend the extra money on it, and then sit through the 30 minutes of ads and 15 minutes of trailers, and while it is fun, there's, again, just so many other options. Again, we're old enough to remember back when a movie would come out, and I'll just use Star Wars because it's still my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
So it comes out in 77. You know, you'd re-release it a few times, and then in the early 80s, we got a Betamax. And then later VHS, even though Beta was the better quality, and that's a story for...
You're right, it was. You're exactly right.
But then if you wanted to buy it, it was $100. Imagine $100 back then, just to buy a movie. You know, try and tell somebody I always think, like, how would my 11-year-old niece think? Oh, but yeah, okay, the movie comes out, and what do you mean I have to see it in the theater? Oh, it's just going to be out on TV in 2 months or to stream. Like, no, we didn't have any of that. And I use this also, too. I think if my niece would become an actor, the advice I'd give now would be, yeah, okay, go pursue it, because there's so many options out there, so many people filming things. You're not going to be a big star, because there's none left. I mean, I don't know if you watched the Golden Globes, because like my wife forced me to.
No, I don't watch any of that.
Well, I have a wife, and I had to sort of cave in on that one.
Sure, I understand.
Yeah, so we'll watch that. It was pretty much the same conversation. She'd say, "Who's that?" "I don't know." "What are they in?" "I've never heard of it."
You know, I got to tell you, though, my friend Laura, that's my producer in all of this, her sister's into independent movie making, and I went to a thing in Richmond one night. They invited me to it, and it was like a review of like 8 movies that were 15 minutes long, tied up like little short movies. And when it was over, I got to hang out with some of the people that were there. I don't remember. I think it was at some level of competition. I got invited to it, and we actually did a show with her sister as well on a couple of movies, Gone with the Wind and Color Purple. But anyway, that night I get to talk to this one guy, and brother, I'm gonna tell you what. Some of the stuff they did in 15 minutes was earth-shattering.
I believe it, yeah.
So I had just lost both of my parents in their 90s, but I just lost both of my parents within about a year. And I had a message from my dad, a nice message from my dad on my phone that I never wanted to erase. And I've had other friends tell the same kind of thing. So what this guy did was he made a movie about a guy turning a phone in on his wife that just passed. And he wanted to know how to save, like, her message, and the message that she had recorded for when somebody called. I mean, it's just, I'm like watching, dude. I mean, it was so impactful. And then after the show, when everybody went to a local place there in Richmond, he was telling me, he goes, no, the place we were in was another kind of place. It was like a computer store or something. So they had to make it every night. They had to record it like 1 o'clock in the morning till 4 in the morning, when everybody was out, and make it look like it was a telephone store. They had to drop stuff under shelves and then bring phones out. And I had to do all this work. So the show ends, or this movie ends, with the guy back in the car and replaying one more time his wife's message, just to hear her voice. And dude, I was all messed up, like, because I understood that thing of, so I went to him, I said, dude, I lost my parents, and I have that thing about having phone calls and messages and all. And he goes, man, I'm glad it did something for you, or it spoke to you. People come up to me all the time and say, I had a relative that passed, and their phone. So he touched on an everyday thing, people passing and their phones and the messages. And he turned it into, when the guy comes through the door, the tension that's created in the movie, he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know how to approach him. How do I get my wife's message off? It's the last I'll ever hear her voice. How do I get this off the phone? And the guy takes him to the side, and he's very soothing. It's well shot. And I was like, wow, I just went on that long rant, because there are tons of people that make these short stories and these short movies. And, one of the famous ones was the one the guy did about the dog. God, that'll just tear you apart. The dog comes in, he meets the dog, or he finds the dog, and then the dog eventually passes, and he's left with his ball and his collar. And anyone that loves God's greatest creation, dogs, it tears them up. And it's a short movie. I mean, everybody loves dogs if they have any sense. Well, I'd say everybody loves, they should.
I'm kind of with you on that one. Sometimes a little mantra I try to be is, be the person that my dog thinks I am.
Man, that's so well put. Well, dog and God, it's the same letters, just, God spelled backward. I definitely think the creator did put the dog out there as a shining example. Well, because now we're going to go into another realm, right? But yeah, I mean, when you talk about dogs, like, absolute loyalty.
That's what I'm talking to you, right? I know where we're going to start. I don't know where we're going to end, though.
I don't ever know where we're going to end, which is what, man, I think that makes it for a great show. But yeah, Okay, then I'm going to spitball this one at you too, then, because I've been more and more stewing about that show we did about how some may kind of dismiss my Secretariat argument for being in the Hall of Fame, but
I hear you because we talked. Evan and I had that. He brought that same thing up to me, and I'm the sort of the one sort of like fighting against it, and I guess. Maybe because I just feel like it's an animal. It doesn't know that they're American. I mean, they're aware of.
No, but this is what I got to say. Because I'm old enough to remember.
I think man and woman.
And he's up
Secretariat
here.
For sure. Oh, okay, yeah.
But I got to say this about that too. Like, okay, I get the whole animal argument. And he was literally born 12 miles from where I grew up. So he's special to me. But during the onset of Watergate, we haven't yet pulled out of Vietnam. There is riots in the street. There's civil unrest. He was on the cover of every major magazine. He was referred to as America's horse. We were crazy proud that he was from us. He was from right where we were. We all knew it. But I was there. I was 11 years old. He united the country. He united the country.
Here's what I can do. But yeah, go. Sorry.
No, but I'm saying, and then I saw a guy the other day go back through and he's like, still no one's come close to his records. He's still that guy. He still runs, he's the only horse in recorded history to run 5 quarters, one each faster than the one before. No other horse has ever been recorded doing that. He started at one speed and finished. Every quarter he was progressively faster. He was a weirdo. I mean, he was a weirdo in perfection. So if we're going to say that, race horsing is a sport, it's a heavily betted sport and all the rest, but as far as sporting events in the U.S., there's nothing older. I mean, it's as big as it gets. That's why you used to have all these mansions out there or these large plantation homes with big ovals in front because they were horse tracks. So if we look at the history of the country and we look at the measurement of an athlete, nobody's better than Secretariat. You might say, well, okay, he's excluded. He's a horse. The other ones are not. But nobody's better than him. Nobody's better than him. He's still the best. He
did have something similar that came up about Lance Armstrong, and you're going to see him on the ballot. You saw him on last year's ballot, and Lance wasn't selected, and I think we all to get on the ballot to get on the fan ballot,
right?
And we were hesitant to sort of put him on. And then one of the people who was a voter just talked me into it, like, okay, we'll put him on, and we can do that through the Secretariat and see what happens. I got no problem.
I'll tell you what. I think if you put Secretariat.
So it can be for next year.
Say it again?
It can be for next year. I can't do it for this year.
No. I get, again, I'm sensitive. I'm very sensitive. So when anybody ever kind of says, no, but I'm just saying, because I'm overly sensitive, I'm childish that way. But when anybody ever does a little bit of like dismissing him, I'm just like, you got to know what he was, because he was so special in a time in America where he was Elvis, he was the Beatles. He was all of that. Believe me. You go back and watch the film. But again, no horse gets all the major magazine covers. He did. He was on the cover of everything. And he carried it off too, because he was absolutely aware of his stardom. He was badass.
That's the thing about horses. They've got sort of like the best post-retirement thing plan going. You get put to stud.
Pretty going. Yeah, you notice last year I think it was last year's Kentucky Derby, I think it was 25 entrants, and all 25 of them had a bloodline back to Secretariat.
Really?
Oh yeah, all 25.
Okay, interesting.
Somewhere in the bloodline.
You rethink this a lot more. Okay.
Well, and again, it's when you and I first met.
Yeah.
I remember the first question I asked you were like, "Wow, nobody's ever like, why do we have halls of fame?" Right? And again,
no, I'm the one who blocked it. I'll admit, I'm the one who blocked it. I blocked it as a possibility.
Well, but like a few moments ago when we were discussing other people, it was kind of like, well, hey, it's Hall of Fame. Nobody was more famous than Secretariat.
And that's very true. That's very true.
Nobody was more famous.
Put that out there and see what people do.
No, and I think, but see, the thing is, I think that old fogies like myself. But I do recognize the fact that where I grew up, I know he was the national horse. But again, like the 1980 hockey, I didn't watch hockey. I mean, I was a Bobby Orr fan a little bit as a kid because I saw him and thought he was, He was a great hockey player. Gordie Howe kind of did something for me too as a kid, but I didn't really know the sport that well because I didn't grow up around it. But I tell you what, we were all fans in 1980. We were all fans. Yes.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how excited I am about the Olympics coming up. For hoping that it's going to be a Canada-USA final. Yeah, I'm Canadian, so like I have to cheer for my boys. I just love this jersey and what it represents.
It's a great jersey. Yeah. But that's one of those historic
I know
events.
that's sacrilegious for a lot of people for me to have that behind. Actually, Clark Judge pointed out on a recent show that when I had him on.
No, I dig that. I think that's really sexy. I mean, yeah, and but again, so many of us that really didn't have that big a history with the sport, once they did what they did, and again, what's going on? You got the Iranian hostage situation. They haven't yet been released. Reagan's elected that year, inauguration day, the 444 days. Gas prices are through the roof. You know, the Carter administration is kind of going out in flames. It's a bad time. Then boom, we're in the Olympics. And hockey's just a regional sport in the U.S. It's a huge sport, depending on what part of the country you're in. But it's not like big in Tampa, Florida, although it may be now because they're putting rinks pretty much all over across the country. But yeah.
It's that's something that I never thought I would get on board with. Because I remember, like in the early 90s, right? So I was in my Captain Canada phase. I was so pissed off that, well, I grew up a Quebec Nordiques fan, right? So,
right.
Their time was limited in terms of how long they were going to be able to stay, and that was just so different economically. The Canadian dollar was down, and most of your money was local TV rights because there wasn't a national thing in the States for that. I mean, I think that when they signed their first deal with ESPN, it was for nothing, just to get on TV. I might be off on that, but I don't think I'm off on that.
No, I think you're probably right. Yeah.
So, if you're a Canadian team getting your money in Canadian, but you got to pay your players in American, I mean, it's no wonder that Quebec couldn't manage because their arena was small. Winnipeg, too. Which is still weird. I mean, the history of the Winnipeg Jets, the original Winnipeg Jets of Dale Hawerchuk, belongs to the Utah Mammoth. Yet, in Winnipeg, because I spent a few years there, and I just re-fell in love with hockey, and just like when they got their franchise back from Atlanta, they got to be called the Jets. They got to sort of show off the retired numbers of the original Jets, but they don't actually own the history. It's so weird. It makes no sense at all. So I don't think we're really offending a whole lot of people of the Atlanta Thrashers fandom, both of them. But yeah, back then, so when hockey was sort of exploding in the South, or not exploding, but just we're going to put it in the South, this is never going to work. And yet, with the exception of Georgia, we've seen it work in Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, Texas.
Well, I've been to games in Norfolk where the Admirals play, so I guess they're the equivalent of like the AAA level of hockey.
Yeah, the AHL, yeah, so that's exactly what it is.
Now, I was in Tampa. This just stuck out in my mind. I was in Tampa, Florida, and I was with a buddy that I coach with, do baseball, and we were at like an IHOP, and we got into a conversation with the waitress. I don't even remember exactly how this happened. She goes, "Oh, well, I go to the hockey games." And at the time, wasn't Tampa, I'm talking 5 years ago or so, wasn't Tampa pretty big in hockey?
Yeah.
Where they were right. Well, she goes, we're NHL champions or something. Were they champions like 5 years ago?
Yeah, they were.
Okay. That's what she said. And I'm like, Tampa, Florida? It didn't sound right, but I do remember being in Arizona and seeing a hockey arena.
Yeah. I actually got a chance. I can tell this story now because I'd like to think the statute of limitations has passed since it's moved. But
right.
The franchise moved. But I won't say the exact announcer. But I spoke with interviewed for the site some time ago. It would have been 12 years ago. You announced for the Coyotes, and he said, like off. He said, like, basically the team is going to have a real hard time because they moved. They moved from right downtown Phoenix to Glendale, right next to where the Cardinals play. And I've been there for a Cardinals game, and it's, people there will go out and make the effort to get to Glendale for that, but they're not going to do that easily for hockey. It's just too hard. Yeah. And like once they did that, it was over. And sure enough, And you know, I'm sure you know Arizona very well. It's not like they're not sports fans; they are.
Yeah, the thing about Arizona, it is it's a huge amount of compacted people in a couple of urban areas, and everything else is wide ass open. That you can just drive for miles and not see a soul. I mean, that's just how it's
Right.
configured. But I like Arizona. I've gone to spring training a lot, and all the feels and things there. Arizona's a really cool place to go to spring training. Kind of dig Florida a little bit more because I got more history going to Florida, and you sweat and you know it, like you actually sweat. Where in Arizona, although a couple of years ago when I went to Arizona, I went to both. I went to Florida at one point, went to Arizona. It was a lot of overcast, rainy days for whatever. And that's just unusual in Arizona. But I hit a week where there's a little bit of a kind of messy weather pattern there in Arizona. But yeah, I like Arizona. I mean, what's not to like? I mean, it's a cool place. I would say it's a cool state. There's a lot of cool places in it. But I'm a fan of Florida too, especially in March. Not in July.
Once that happened, they were done. They just couldn't get a foothold. Yeah, it's.
Well, one thing about hockey, though, when you stick it in the deep South, a lot of times you got a lot of New York retirees and, let's say New York as a state, but you're going to get a lot of Northeasterners, and they grew up with hockey. It's not like they're foreign to hockey, and then you're in the South. I mean, they're all about it.
I think also the Four Nations Cup, even though the U.S. lost, Canada gained a lot of fans. There's just something about international best on best hockey that other sports just can't replicate. Basketball can't do it. Baseball can't do it, although they're getting a lot better.
I think
we're seeing a lot better, more higher end American players want to join this, which is good.
I think, though, a lot, and this kind of gets political again, too, but there's been so much of a hammering of the youth of America about all the evils of America and its history and the rest. I mean this. I think it's harder to get kids. Like, what I love about baseball is the international flavor of it. I love it. I love that Ohtani's playing the U.S. I love all my Dominican friends, including Gil, that you know how much I love Gil.
Yeah, absolutely.
And coaching kids from. So I'm saying I love the fact that Major League Baseball has all of these different nationalities. But then when it goes time to play, hear me out on that. I think it makes sense. If you're a Dominican kid and you're playing Major League Baseball in the U.S. and you go home to represent the D.R., all's good. You're making money in the U.S. and you're playing, you go home. I think American kids wear a little bit different when they stand up and go, yeah, I'm American, I'm playing for America. Because they know that the league isn't the major leagues, which of course started off in the United States of America and then touched into Canada with teams. It has become a sport that's not totally dominated by kids not born in America, but it's pretty close. I mean, it's getting pretty close to that. And that's fine. Yeah. But what I'm saying is it used to be a game that was considered an American game. So other teams that put together international teams for competition, everybody clearly knew where the lines were drawn. And if we look at our best players in the major leagues, what percent of them are American? So when it goes time to go represent America, I think it's kind of weird for American kids because they're playing against all these other all-stars from all these other countries that dominate in the U.S. while they're playing Major League Baseball. So I don't know that the American kids are really allowed to have pride in being American. It's just I think it's a weird dynamic now for American kids.
I won't go too deep into the woods on this, but so when I was doing a lot of my rowing classes, and so every morning I'm walking into my rowing class, and I've always got my Team Canada hockey hat on. This is during the Four Nations. I'm in Seattle. I had a lot of people say, I'm American, but I'm cheering for you. I'll leave it at that. It's and every time I'd hear it, it still would mess me up a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can say this about baseball.
Yeah.
I remember in the 80s when I had a friend of mine play Team USA. It was pretty much all the college kids that this friend of mine, ended up playing 4 years of AAA. Probably should have played the big leagues. It's a long story, but he was first team All-American and all the rest. And when I go back and look at those All-America teams that made up Team USA, and then what was it, the 92 Olympics when America won? 88. I guess it was 88 when Jim Abbott was on the mound. Jim Abbott that pitched at Michigan, the one-arm pitcher that ended up, But I'm trying to remember some of the guys that played during that period. Or it's either 88 or 92. I'd have to look it up, When Whitney Houston did the song for the Olympics, like the closing part of the song, Abbott's getting the last ground ball out and the U.S. wins. Anyway, my point is all those guys went into pro ball. Many of them went into the majors. And it was clearly a U.S. team that represented the U.S.
Right.
Major League Baseball wasn't totally dominated by international players at that time. So this is the point I'm making. And I'm probably walking on thin ice here to say this. But what I'm saying is you kind of thought about Major League Baseball as being American, right? There were definitely players from other countries to some degree that played. There were stars. And now it's become so dominated by people not American. I think the American kids, like I said, that go to represent the U.S. are kind of lost in, I'm not really sure what I'm representing anymore because they know the best players aren't American anymore. I think that's really the point. So back in 88, we could go somewhere in the world and the team we were going to have to play, I say we, the United States, we knew Cuba was as good or better than anybody. But their guys were 33 and they were basically professionals playing against amateurs. Right, but these were the guys that couldn't get away from Castro to go play in the big leagues. Now, you got 30 guys from Cuba in the big leagues? There's a whole team made up of guys that got away or got out. I guess it must be much easier to do now. But how many guys in Cuba in 1974, had they been able to get out of the country, would have played in the majors? A ton. But that wasn't an issue. Right. So what I'm saying is, in 88, there was no doubt in my mind when I was in my mid-20s, Americans were the best baseball players. And I think I was right. That ain't true anymore. It's not true. And I think I used to hear guys say that went overseas, like, hey, you guys see the Japanese guys play. I'm like, really? Oh, yeah. Because in my mind, I was like, aren't they smaller guys? Okay, then Ohtani shows up, right? He's 6'4", he's Babe Ruth, right? And so I'm all about the Japanese players too, man. I love Suzuki, or Ichiro, God knows. Ichiro, like, who the hell couldn't like him? And he brought a different thing in, right? And especially up in Seattle where, he was so loved. Yeah, and so I'm all for all of God's children playing in the big leagues, but I think it's made it harder for American kids to identify with being American because, like I said, you can be the kid from the DR, you can be the kid from another country, and you go home and you represent your country, and absolutely you represent your country. And the American kids are left with, we know we're not even the best players in the world anymore. We don't represent.
How far are we away from that American basketball players thinking the same thing?
It's the same thing. Exactly. Great point. I don't think we'll ever have a dream team like 92. And I know it's been argued about the later team with Kobe and what was that? Was that 2000? Was it 2000?
You can argue that there could be better built American teams, but at the same time, the 12 best players, well, Christian Laettner was on that team, but
he was a throw-in. Well, and Isaiah Thomas should have been on it, but nobody liked him, so Stockton was on instead of him. I don't think any of them, all the feuding and shit was going on, but hey, Isaiah Thomas belonged on that team. And it didn't matter.
They were so good that you could leave him off.
Right.
And it didn't make
but he did belong on it. He belonged on the team. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the gap between that, what did Barkley say? Like, I don't know where Angola is, but I know we're going to destroy them, because that was their first game. And I did another show that it kind of went dormant. It was like, we called it the Classic Sports Review, and I do a deep dive in just an old game. So I found on YouTube, it was the 92 Dream Team in a warm-up game against Team Canada.
Yeah.
And it went as well for the Canadians as you'd expect. Because, like, again, back then, it was like the greatest semblance of basketball players that ever existed on the same team against a Canadian team that was, I didn't know who any of them were except for one guy, only because he was the Raptors color commentator. And he had a cup of coffee, I believe, in the bigs. I don't even know how much. Some of them I couldn't even find bios.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, I mean, like, Canada can put together but then that also sort of changes. Canada's going through the same thing with hockey. The best players, I honestly think on paper, the best players right now are American. So it's that divide between Canada and everyone else. It was Canada, the Soviet Union, pretty much neck and neck, and then 4 other countries right below. with the then Czechoslovakia, Sweden, Finland, and the United States, and Czech now just sort of like being the just Czechia, whatever. Now the U.S. is the big thing. Russia, who are not allowed to compete in the Olympics coming up, but now you've got all these up and coming countries out of nowhere. The Germans are good. There's 6 German players in the NHL. One of them just won the Hart Trophy 3 years ago. Leon Draisaitl, first German to do that. The Swiss team has a lot of NHL players. The Swiss? But here they are.
I apologize for my ignorance, but I was just thinking, even though we went over maybe some of the myths involved with the formation of baseball, it is an American sport, and professional football, as we know it, is is certainly founded in the United States as we know it. And basketball, Naismith was definitely in Massachusetts, was formed in. So when you think about it, and that was 1891. So when you think about it, in baseball, it was a colonial game as well, probably, but it was certainly around during the American Revolution and became something after the American Civil War. You're going to have a jump on a sport when you invent it, for sure. And then other people are going to pick up on it. The fact that, and I'm still fascinated by the Cubans. I am really fascinated by the Cubans, but Castro, and this has always been argued, Castro got a tryout with the Senators, and had he made the team or he had gotten more of a professional look, maybe he doesn't go back and play dictator, Fidel Castro.
Yeah,
but
it's the same thing. It's like if Hitler could paint better.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that being said, the fact that Cuba could produce so many players, there's you're talking about the elite of the elite again, back to my fingers that far apart of the guys that could play at the big league level, that a country the size of an island like Cuba could produce that many guys. And then that's not even to get into the Dominican Republic, in that same time frame, developing players in the fashion they have. That's crazy. That less than 2% of the American population could represent 20% of professional baseball. It's crazy that it can do that. But they're doing things and they're approaching their development in a way that's working. And I just think, well, here goes the get off my lawn stuff again. American kids to some degree are getting softer. There is more time in front of the TV or in front of a computer playing video games or doing something other than going out in the fresh air and running around. And kids in certain environments are certainly going to excel. The knock probably about greater development in hockey some time ago would have been the lack of hockey rinks in the U.S., but they kind of seem to have sprung up all over the place as well. They're everywhere now.
It's one of my new favorite players who I thought was sort of snubbed from the American team. A kid named Jason Robertson plays for Dallas. Mm-hmm. He's from California. He's a half Filipino Californian.
Wow,
that's America to me, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
And apparently, like a really good guy. When he was in Winnipeg, when the Dallas Stars were in Winnipeg, so someone told me she's a Vietnamese Canadian, and her son's in hockey. He went into, because there was an Asian league to develop Asian kids for Winnipeg. He made an appearance there to just sort of to step out. Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, was born in Phoenix when his dad was playing for the Coyotes, and sort of like was getting his cut there. I mean, Texas is developing players. I mean, Gary Bettman, for all his faults, wanted to grow the sport in the United States, and it's working. It is working. Every Canadian hates him because they feel he's anti-Canada. Maybe he is, but the money's in the U.S. If I'm commissioner, I don't know. I'm doing it any differently.
Yeah, it's all interesting, brother. I always enjoy talking to you. I think we're at that hour point. What would you like to say in closing about all the varied subjects we've gone through here, all the crazy turns we made here?
It's always a ride, and that's sort of like why it's been my favorite soap opera to watch. I wish I was more of an athlete. I came out of the womb tripping. That's just how much of a klutz I am. 2 left feet, but it's always sort of like been there for me. Have fun with all of this, and celebrate greatness where we can. And that's sort of what I try to do.
Yeah, having been this far removed from playing, the years that have passed, one thing I know, when you get around people that played the game, we always get a lot better than we really were, as the stories get better as we think back. But
I get worse.
But I tell you what when we start Friday, what I love more than I've ever loved, the kids I'm coaching right now, I really love these kids. I really do, because there's the thing of you're going to put on, that's what's kind of unique and special about baseball too. You put on a uniform with them. You literally put on a uniform with them. I love game day. I just love, because it's an unwritten chapter in whatever the season's going to be. It's unwritten. You don't know how it's going to go. You don't know the direction it's going to go. And you go out there and you watch it play out. And sometimes you see some kids. I had a kid in Summer League a couple years ago, and in 2 victories in our conference tournament, he came up with hits off the bench in two games. We don't get to the next level if he doesn't do that. And he'll start this year. And last year he was kind of more off the bench. But, dude, man, that's just like, when I'm watching that, I love the kid anyway, because I'd coached him in summer before, but he stepped up and was heroic. You know what I mean? That was real. That was like, it's real life. We're playing at college at a certain level, but, kids can fail too, and you think the world of them. But when the guys do stuff like that and you're a part of it, even if you're just on the side of old man observing it, it's part of what they're doing. And you get to see them grow up, and you get to see them, it's all the cliche stuff of, face adversity and all the rest, but you get to watch them grow up. And I got some kids. I mean, there's some kids. I really care about these kids. I really care about these kids. And I guess what I'm really trying to say, boiled down, it's a family. Right. And that's the beauty of athletics. The beauty of athletics is you really, truly are family. You get the vibe of you're part of a family, and it matters. So I appreciate you, brother, so much. Please let everybody know where they can find you.
You can find us at notinhalloffame.com. That's actually also my X handle for those checking that out. But so notinhalloffame.com, we celebrate. We rank those who are not in major halls of fame. Always lots of discussions. You can find that also on YouTube, Spotify, all the things that we do there. You're going to be a guest on another show we're going to have soon, Jack. You're going to be voluntold for that. It's going to be When Athletes Sing.
Got it.
Yeah, and a lot of other things. We're expanding as much as we can.
And we are recording, you, me, and Gil, Thursday night this week.
Absolutely.
We're going to be together. So
Bottom of the third, episode 2.
Bottom of the third, yes. So everybody that listens to More to Consider and listens to Not in the Hall of Fame is going to listen to Bottom of the Third. It's my friend Gil Florentino, my good friend Kirk here, and Jack Moore here with More to Consider. And we sit around and talk about some... And again, you know this, Gil gets some inside stuff. He gets some poop from the inside, like really from the inside. So if you like baseball and you want to hear what's really happening, we have some pretty good perspectives on that. And always a pleasure,
Can't wait to smoke a stogie with them one day. Can't wait to smoke a stogie with them one day.
Yeah. We're going to get a beer and a steak somewhere, brother, and smoke a cigar.
Sure.
Absolutely. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thanks
More
so
to
much.
Consider. Please like, subscribe, make comments. Just make sure they're positive comments, because if you don't, I won't read them anyway, or so I'll have Laura read them and we'll go over them. All right, everybody take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, subscribe and hit your notification button to get an update when we post another episode. See you soon.